All right. Welcome back to Wisdom Beyond the Classroom. We are joined by a very special guest and a friend of mine, Willard Barth. Willard, thanks for being here.
It is great to see you, my friend. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the
Yeah,
invitation.
absolutely. Willard is a man of, well, we could say many talents, and he has done a lot in his life and continues to do a lot of work. Willard is a licensed master NAP trainer and actually the co-creator of NAP. He's an NLP practitioner. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a business consultant, and he's also a transformation expert. So, did I get all that down, Willard?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, right on. I love that on your website. Maybe the first thing I saw was change is inevitable, growth is optional, transformation is a choice. Can you talk about that just for a moment?
Sure. It's that sub tagline, change is inevitable, growth is optional, transformation is a choice, came from when I was writing the book, The Anatomy of Transformation. And my mentor had asked me, there's a lot of things that we may get into later on in here that I have overcome in my life and transformed. And then going on for the past 25 years professionally, helping other people make transformations. And one of the things that we were discussing when I was pulling the book together was, what is it that's going on with people? And it's just this reality. In life, everything changes. The seasons change, our bodies change, the economy changes, our health changes, all of these things. It's inevitable. Everything is changing in every moment. The challenge is change does not lead to transformation. A lot of times people think, well, if I just change this habit, change this thing, it's going to end up transforming my life. It's about growth is the first point. Change for many people, and I'm sure you've seen it in the circles that you've run in, is people, they do what we call default to familiar. They keep wanting to go to how things have been, what they used to do in the past. And sometimes they hold on to it to their greatest detriment. It damages them financially, it damages them in their health and their relationships because they're not willing to let go of how things were. So the growth part, I say, is optional. If you're going to truly transform, it's a conscious decision. It's about recognizing that where you are may or may not serve you, but it's not where you want to be, and you're going to plot the course to where you want to go. So that's kind of the longer version than just shrunk it down to those 3 little sound bites.
That's awesome. Thank you for that answer. That was fantastic. So I really do want to get into how this all started with you and your story. What led you to living a life about learning about and helping other people transform their lives?
How much time do we have?
I mean, we got the time. I want to hear the story. I want to go back and definitely hear it.
So there's a part of my childhood that was very challenging. I grew up in a household where my father left before I was born, and my mother, being an extremely strong woman, in the 60s, when having an illegitimate child was really looked down on, she's committed. It's like, no, I am going to raise my child. And she worked 3 jobs so she could support herself, myself, and my grandmother.
Wow.
And to add on to the stresses that she already had, I had a lot of health problems when I was a child. And it wasn't like it was, certain different genetic things that were happening. I was pretty accident prone in a lot of ways. By the time I was 13 years old, I'd been in the hospital 13 times, had 9 operations.
Wow.
But a key turning point was when I was 8 years old. I was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma, which is a form of bone cancer. And I ended up having to have my left leg amputated. Now, that put me on 2 very diverse paths. One side, I became this mega achiever because I didn't want to seem like I was different than other people. So anything that I even thought that somebody would say, you can't do that, it would be like, screw you, I'm going to go make it happen.
Right.
So on the positive side of things, I started making my living as a professional musician at 15 years old. I was the first licensed amputee motorcyclist in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
I lettered in junior high school wrestling. I lettered in high school football as a place kicker of all things, a one-legged place kicker.
What?
And then I started my first business when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
So to the outside world, it looked like everything was going great.
Yeah.
But the challenge was I had an 8-year-old's perception
Hmm.
of everything that was happening around losing my leg.
Mhm.
You know, 8-year-old in 1973, they weren't even tracking the percentages of people in the United States on the whole who had cancer, let alone children.
Wow.
At that period in time, I was only aware of myself and one other child having cancer.
Mhm.
So I grow up in a religious household. Religion, the answer to so many things.
Right.
It's going, okay, I'm being punished. I did something wrong. I don't know what I did wrong.
Right.
So the 8-year-old's perception was there must be something wrong with me. God must not like me. You know, I must be the spawn of Satan. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So I started distancing myself from my family because I'm like, if God's willing to do this to me, he's going to hurt anybody that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
13 years old, I have no self-esteem. I'm extremely angry. I have no self-worth. And I find the wonderful world of alcohol and laced with that some drugs. And the same way that I excelled at the good things, I also excelled at that.
Okay.
You know, I was the one who, you know, was making sure that I could drink everybody under the table. You know, 16 years old, I'm riding motorcycles and I end up joining a motorcycle gang. I don't have to just, you know, ride the motorcycle. I got to go to the dark side of things. And because I'm riding with a motorcycle gang, 16 years old, I'm walking into bars where the legal drinking age is 21 and nobody's asking questions when you walk in with 16 to 20 other bikers. So I'm in bars at 16-year-old drinking.
Wow. 19
years old, like I said, I had my first business. I also got my first arrest for driving under the influence or drunk driving. You know, it's changed its name over the years. Within 12 months, I was arrested 4 more times for a total of 5 arrests for driving while intoxicated.
Wow.
And luckily, I say this, 1983, 84, when that was happening, the laws for driving under the influence were nowhere near as strict as they are now. But even with that, 5 arrests, I was facing between 5 to 8 years in jail. And I did a total of 12 months between jails, halfway houses, and rehabs. Didn't keep me sober. You know, I continued to go out and do this self-destructive behavior until I got my 6th DUI. Had to make sure I got all the fingers up there. And that didn't keep me sober. I stayed sober for a month after that arrest. I was going to court on August 22nd. And on August 16th, I'm like, you know what? I know I'm going back to jail. There's nothing that can be done to stop that. So I'm going to go out and get drunk one last time.
Oh, wow.
And I did. I went out, I got obliterated. I woke up in a parking lot the next morning behind the wheel of my car, not knowing how I got there. And that was the morning that there were a lot of other experiences that were stacking on top of each other to get to that leverage point that we talk about of, you know, when you get the leverage to make the change. But that morning was when I woke up and the leverage all came together to where I said, I can't keep doing this. I have to, this isn't the life that I thought I was going to have when I was a kid. I've got to find out what's going on and how I can stop doing this. And that's what started the journey of the transformation.
Wow. Holy moly. That's incredible. And so I guess, you know, making that decision, I guess, in your mind, and then you had to go through, it sounds like at least, you know, about 12 months with jail and rehab and halfway houses. What was kind of your guiding light, or, you know, what helped you continue? Did you have a mentor? Did you start diving into books? I mean, how did you really put one foot in front of the other?
Well, I just want to correct the timeline on this. The 12 months actually happened before that 6th DUI.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had already done time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I got arrested that 6th time.
Gotcha.
the answer to the question again will be a little bit more involved. When I woke up that morning,
Mm-hmm.
there were two major things that happened that day.
Mm-hmm.
So for years, people have been telling me that my drinking and my using drugs was causing a lot of problems for myself and for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are in that psychology, that mentality, you don't see it. Your blinders are on. You're just doing
Right.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how many people tell you, it's got to be something that you take responsibility for.
Totally.
And that morning when I woke up, simple shift. I mean, you and I, the environment we're in around Tony Robbins and everything, we know about the 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters can make the difference in the world.
Right.
Simple shift of the arrangement of the words in a sentence, where I've stopped saying that I drink and use drugs because I have problems to I've got problems because I drink and use drugs, accepting that it was the flip of it. That was the one part.
Mm-hmm.
The second part was I wanted to die at that point in my life. I would put myself in situations hoping that I would be killed, walking into a biker bar with a pistol sticking out of the front of my belt, hoping to get into a fight. But there was this glimmer, this light that I think you referred to, that I always had this concern, respect, protective piece of other people. As sick as it was, I would drink and do stupid shit to break people's trusts, but I would see an older woman and some children broken down along the side of the road, and I would stop to help them change their tire and wouldn't accept, $20 from them that they were wanting to give me, because again, that was that light that was inside of me of that good person. And it was confusing as hell, because I was like, why am I being that? I don't give a, can I say bad words on here? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. You can say whatever you want.
I don't give a shit about other people.
Yeah.
Why am I caring about this person that's broken down on the side of the road?
Well,
that morning when I woke up, I had gotten used to walking around my car in the morning looking for bumps, accident type of stuff. But that morning I was like, one of these days, I'm going to wake up and in a blackout, in a fight, something, I'm going to have killed somebody else. And I'm going to have to wake up every day for the rest of my life, knowing that I destroyed somebody else's family, somebody else's dreams.
Yeah.
So I'm leading to the answer to your question. Sorry, it's taking a little bit longer, but
no, it's good.
While I was in jail and rehabs and halfway houses in that previous time, I had been introduced to people through 12-step programs and other things who seemed to have gotten their lives turned around. They had accumulated a year, 10 years, 20 years of not using drugs or alcohol. And when I woke up that morning, I'm like, somebody knows how to get through a day without drinking. I need to find those people and find out how they do it. So it was, first off, fear of killing somebody else and having to live with that for the rest of my life. Because again, I didn't care if I lived or died. I'd already been in jail. So those as leverage points weren't scaring me straight. But the idea of destroying somebody else's life and then having to live with it, that was the thing that I held on to, especially for the first year of my recovery. And in answer to your question, yes, mentors, I sought out anybody I could who had been in my situation, meaning, trouble with the law, drugs, alcohol, who now was having a productive life and created relationships where I could call them at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, which I did several times to prevent myself from picking up a drink or a drug.
Wow. That's, and so then it led to then, transforming your life to then really finding a passion or a calling that, what you went through, now you could help other people transform their lives.
That wasn't the initial intention of it, but
right.
but that's kind of where the path led to. People ask, well, how did you get into the coaching and consulting and the personal development world? And I joke around and I say, well, I don't believe in accidents, but it was 100% an accident. I immersed myself. I mean, when I woke up that morning, I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially destroyed.
Yeah.
I had been homeless a couple of times at that point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was so messed up in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly had told so many lies to people that I didn't even know what was true for myself about who I was.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, I was constantly trying to cover my tracks on the things I did.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized, like I said, that first year, it was all about fear.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was going to 12-step programs and they had these anniversary meetings where, you know, they congratulate you for reaching a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember one of my mentors at that time, you know, was celebrating this 1 year anniversary. I said, I feel like a fake. I'm like, you know, I didn't stay sober for a year because I was working this 12-step program. I stayed sober because I was scared shitless.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, whatever the leverage is that kept you here, it kept you here. Now do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And it was that point where I shifted and going, I really want to understand deeply what was going on in here that had me throw my life away so much. So I immersed myself in studying human behavior, psychology, scientific approaches to, you know, neuroscience and neuropsychology and religious paths and philosophies. Immersed myself in that for 8 years. And I had no intention of becoming a coach or a consultant or an advisor or speaking. I was doing it to save my own ass.
Mm-hmm.
I was still pursuing a career as a musician and doing quite well at it. And it was actually my voice teacher. I was working on recording my first CD, and I was working with one of the top vocal coaches in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into my lesson one day, and I was like, Katie, I have no idea what's going on. I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. I was working in New York City as a DJ, along with doing, you know, recording my CD, making more money than I ever had in my life, working on my life's dream of recording original music.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't in the studio or at work, I was depressed and laying around in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, you know what? I just got these, and pointed to a bunch of CDs on her filing cabinet that she had ordered. And it was Tony Robbins' Personal Power.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I suggest that you listen to those. So I took her advice, started listening to it. Through their marketing, I was invited to attend a one-day event that was being put on in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Went to that event, signed up for a 4-day weekend event. And while I was at that event, a bunch of the people were sitting around me were coming to me to help them understand what was being taught.
Mm-hmm.
And the staff noticed that, you know, I was whatever they perceived, I was just kind of like the center of attention around a lot of people, and they were paying attention. And they realized, based on what they told me later on, that, you know, this guy knows his shit. He knows what he's talking about.
Mm.
And they offered me a job as a coach.
Wow.
And
And what year is this, Willard?
1997.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It was November of 1997. Actually, December is when they offered me the job. And I didn't take them up on the job until March of 98.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like I said, I was making more money than I've ever made working in New York City. And I wasn't going to leave that to go into a field that I never had even considered before.
Mm-hmm.
But as the universe does, it was around January or February of 98, where some things were happening in New York City
Mm-hmm.
that impacted my income. So I ended up taking them up on it and saying, you know, look, I'll do this coaching thing part-time.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to work for Tony Robbins' organization, and the experience of working with people and then being moved into a corporate facilitator where I would teach companies sales and leadership and team building, I started really getting excited. You know, I loved doing music because you made people feel good.
Yeah.
But you made people feel good for the length of the song or the length of the performance that you're doing that
Right.
night.
Right.
With the coaching and the consulting, you weren't just making them feel good, you were giving them tools that would help them continue to feel good and to improve their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, the air conditioner just kicked on, so if it's noisy, I can turn it
Oh, all good. Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And thank you for that thorough answer. With all the things that you do, Willard, I want to get into, you're a licensed master NAP trainer, and you're actually the co-creator of NAP. Can you tell us what exactly NAP is and just
Sure.
dive into that a little bit?
I can give you a generalization of what it is, not so much exactly what it is.
Sure.
In the sense of it's kind of hard to go into the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
So what was happening was about 7-8 years ago, I was doing some work along with another trainer, and people were coming up to us constantly going, where can we go to learn how to do what you do?
Mm-hmm.
And we would talk with each other going, there's no one place we can send people, because each of us at that point in our life, between the two of us, we'd invested about $1.5 million in our own personal development and growth.
Wow.
Through attending seminars, taking courses, all these other types of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's not one place, we can send you to Tony Robbins, but you're going to be missing this component and that component, this component and that component.
Sure.
But they just more people just came asking, going, we see the results that you get with people. We want to do this in our lives. Where can we go to learn it?
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I said to her name was Lisa. I said, Lisa, it's like, why don't we just create it? It's like, we can't send them somewhere. So let's take the best of what we know and put it together into a program where we can certify people. And that's what we did. We looked at the things that we learned from Tony and from Richard Bandler and from Wayne Dyer and from Stuart Wilde and from Maslow and all these other people and said, this is part of what started for me when that first year or after that first year. I don't know whether it was a gift or whether somebody taught it to me, but the idea was there's so many theories out there of what works. But if you really look, you'll find a common thread that runs through all of them. So the common thread is usually what it is that makes the change, not the specific tactics or the specific strategies that are involved in some of the different therapies or modalities. So what I set out to do in that situation was to go, let's look for the common thread and let's narrow this down so people don't have to go get certified in NLP, as well as DHE, as well as Ericksonian hypnosis, as well as marketing, as well as business development, and let's put it together in a process. So NAP stands for Neuro-Associative Programming, which is kind of a mixture of taking from neuro-linguistic programming, Tony's neuro-associative conditioning, but also bringing in some of the elements of the other modalities I spoke about. And we put together a comprehensive course, 12-month long course, 365 hours worth of interaction and training. Because what we saw when we looked at the coaching and consulting industry is there's a very small number of people who are able to really make even a living being a coach or a consultant, let alone be in 6 figures or higher.
Right.
And what we discovered was there are 3 pieces that prevent people from succeeding. Number one is they've never made the transformation themselves. So they're trying to tell people how to do things that they've never experienced. And I believe that you've seen that in some of the environment where you get people who are coming in and going, I'm a health coach, but they're extremely overweight. Or I'm going to help you build your financial future. And they can't make ends meet, with what they're doing. They haven't gotten the result. The second thing is they don't have a true working knowledge of human behavior. They'll go to, I'll refer to Tony a lot because I know that you and I know Tony's format, and I'm presuming a bunch of the audience does. They'll go to a Tony Robbins seminar. They'll have an experience. So let's say that they go through the Dickens pattern, which you and I are familiar with. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, do a little research, not going to go into it, but it's a process of using leverage, pain and pleasure to help you change.
Right.
Somebody goes through that, gets a great experience, and they think that is the one and only fix-it tool to help people transform. If you want to help somebody change, you got to give enough pain, and then they're going to want to run towards the future. But every human being is different. So most people who get involved in the coaching business have maybe 5 tools in their toolkit. With NAP, our students left with over 150 different techniques that
Mm,
they could use. So if they're working with a client and that client's not responsive because that doesn't align with their personality and their way of
mhm,
thinking, great, let me switch to a different approach. Let me use a different tool.
mm,
So most people don't make a good living at coaching because they don't have the skill set. And the third and final is that most people, I should have given this statistic before, 2013 is where this number comes from. I don't know whether it's changed a lot since then,
mhm.
but the average income for a life coach in the United States is less than $28,000 a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Mhm.
If and that falls into like a part-time type of thing. If they looked and expanded it deeper and they included personal trainers like for weight training and that type of stuff,
Mhm.
full-time moves up to $75,000 a year.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
again, we came up with these three things of going, well, what is it that these people are not getting that doesn't allow them to succeed? Because we know a lot of people who are making high six figures
Mhm.
doing coaching and business consulting. And
Mhm.
the third and final piece that we saw was there are plenty of courses out there that will certify you in hypnosis or NLP or Tony's work, but they don't teach you how to truly build a business.
Mm.
And most people who are stepping into the world of coaching and consulting had a job from somebody else before where that other person, that other company did the marketing, put together the policies and the procedures, put together
Mm.
the administration, the back office things.
Right.
They took care of all that. So these people jump into the coaching world thinking if I build it, they will come. It's like,
Mm.
if you don't know how to build a business, they're not.
Mhm.
So
Right.
NAP was the culmination of those things. Again, I give long-winded answers, so I should have prepared you for that earlier.
No, it's great. I love it. I'd rather hear the in-depth and for you to go deep on it. So I appreciate it. Um, and so you're also an NLP practitioner. So if somebody was interested in NLP, but was interested in, some of these other components, it sounds like the NAP is really the way to go, just so you're more well-rounded so that you have more tools in your tool belt.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, I love what Dr. Bandler has done with NLP.
Mhm.
I think he is a genius.
Mhm.
And as he says, I did not personally hear him say this. I've heard his right hand man say this,
Mhm.
that Dr. Bandler admits that one of the biggest mistakes that he made with NLP
Mhm.
was the process that he created to disseminate the information. So he
Mm.
created this business model where you would get certified as a practitioner, then a master practitioner, then a trainer, then a master trainer.
Uh-huh.
And at a certain level, you could start certifying and licensing other people.
Mm.
But it's like the telephone game. Since he wasn't the one that was managing and overseeing how people were getting trained, he was starting to find people coming up going, yeah, I'm an NLP master trainer. And then they would be talking about things and he's going, I created this shit and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it all depended, there's plenty of people out there who are certified in NLP at certain levels, but it really also depends on who did they get certified by? What is the level of it? So
Mm.
my belief when it came to NLP, and when anybody asks me is, you want to learn NLP or design human engineering, which is Richard's other major technology, go directly to the source. Why should you go to somewhere else? Richard is still alive and teaching. NLP is phenomenal. Go to Richard to learn those things.
Mm.
If you want to have more tools than just NLP, where we
Mm.
bring in some of the energy healing modalities, where we bring in some of the, these other pieces and the business model,
Mm.
then come and check out NAP.
Mm. Interesting. Wow. And so I want to shift gears here for a minute and actually talk about your book, The
Mhm.
Anatomy of Transformation. And it
Yep.
sounds like perhaps it has components of NAP in there. And so, yeah, can you just give us a little bit of a dive into your book and
Sure.
why somebody would pick it up?
Absolutely. So the book came about from me talking to one of my mentors. I had taken some time off the road to take care of my mother who was getting older, and I just couldn't be traveling all the time. I needed to
Mhm.
be more local. And when I was getting ready to go back out on the road, I was like, I don't want to go out and just regurgitate the same stuff that I was talking about 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
It's like, I want to come up with something new that is
Mhm.
kind of like, hey, welcome back. What are we doing?
Mhm.
So my mentor had said to me, Willard, there's a lot of people who have overcome drug and alcohol addiction, being in jail, losing a leg to cancer, or losing a limb to cancer,
Mhm.
being homeless, being $250,000 in debt, being sexually abused. He goes,
Mhm.
but I don't know anybody who's overcome all those things other than you,
Mhm.
and has gone on to help other people make these extreme transformations in their lives.
Mhm.
And he said, what is it that allowed you to turn yourself around in all those areas? And what is it that you do with your students?
Mhm.
And I really, really had to think about it. And
Mhm.
after putting time into that thought process, I identified a framework, which I call the anatomy of transformation.
Mhm.
And after I identified the framework, I'm like, okay, I want to go out and test this theory with people. So I would talk to other successful people, whether it was in business, entertainment, sports, athletics, and talk to them about their journey from where they were to where they wanted to be.
Mhm.
And in every single case, people went through the same transformation phases.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, I need to hone in on this. And that's where the framework for the anatomy of transformation came from.
Mhm.
In the book, there's a couple of references to NAP and a couple of exercises for NAP, but really the book is more about recognizing that no matter what you want to do, whether you want to become a better parent, whether you want to improve your health, your finances, any
Mhm.
area of your life,
Mhm.
this is the path that everybody has to go through to go from where they are to where they want to be.
Mm. Wow. Sounds like it sounds like some incredible information in there. How come Oprah hasn't had you on yet?
I don't know. I'm
We get
working my way in those kind of directions. I just did my first TED talk, so it's a
Did
bit.
you? Oh, awesome. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. Oh, 1 second here.
If you know anybody that can make that type of introduction, I'm totally open for it. So
That is fantastic. I love that. The anatomy of transformation. So, let's say that somebody really has some major things going on, whether, it's drug and alcohol, whether it's a financial hole, or, you mentioned some of them, and, they're just not in a good place. Um, Not just in their outside, but more or less in here. Um, what are just some simple things, besides like picking up your book and doing some major things, what are some simple things that people can start to do, just to kind of climb out of where they're at?
well, that question is a little hard to answer, because you're asking on what can people do. And if we're talking about the full process of transformation,
Hmm.
the anatomy of transformation actually has three modules within it.
Hmm.
There are the 7 phases of transformation.
Hmm.
There are the 3 cornerstones for change. And
Hmm.
then there are the 7 keys to success and fulfillment.
Hmm.
So what actually allows someone to make a transformation is what the 7 phases are. And I
Hmm.
call them phases because they're not steps.
Hmm.
Steps are something that you do to progress from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
Hmm.
The phases, a couple of them you're not even aware of, you're not even conscious of when
Hmm.
it's happening, but
Hmm.
you still have to go through that territory to get to the next.
Hmm.
So I'll give you as quick of a short reply to that as possible.
Sure.
The first phase in transformation is ignorance.
Hmm.
We don't know what we don't know. So if it's drugs and alcohol, we don't know possibly the damage we're causing for ourselves, or the damage that it's causing for other people.
Hmm.
Or maybe it's not anything to do with a negative habit. Maybe it's the fact that you grew up in a family where you were taught that school teachers' kids became school teachers, doctors' kids became doctors, factory
Hmm.
workers' kids became factory workers,
Sure.
and you were ignorant
Hmm.
of the possibility that you could do something outside of that box.
Right.
My family was a lot of blue collar workers.
Mm.
And to them, the step out of the box was, you're going to go to school so you can get a job to be a manager at the blue collar job.
Right.
That was the extent of their model of the world
Right.
of what was possible.
Right.
I never knew that somebody who grew up being the son of a nurse could become an entrepreneur, could become these things. So
Mm.
there's ignorance, you don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
You move from phase 1 to phase 2, which is awareness.
Mm.
Either enough pain occurs that you go, what the hell is going on? And you become aware that there's something that's not working correctly for you, like I did with my drinking and my drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just be having a conversation. Somebody could zip in on your podcast and catch like a 5-minute segment and go, I never thought that I could actually become a business owner. I mean, my parents told me I had to go to school and become an accountant and take over my dad's job. You mean I could do something else?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a smack in the head that leads to awareness.
Right.
But awareness, again, it's not a step, because awareness doesn't always lead to transformation.
Mm.
A lot of times awareness becomes the excuse that people use to stay where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, well, I can't be successful because X, fill in the blank with whatever bullshit they want to tell themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The what to do to make that change starts with phase 3, when we move into the doing of something. And phase 3 is when you take responsibility.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, if there's things that are screwed up in your life,
Mm-hmm.
or if your life is going great, most people will tend to either blame or give credit to things outside of themselves.
Mm.
They'll blame their parents, they'll blame the economy, they'll blame God, like I did, whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll give credit to, well, I was lucky. My family helped me out. I had a friend who opened up this door for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, in every situation, it was you who made the decisions and took the actions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people will push back on me and say, well, you had no ability to take responsibility for losing your leg to cancer. They're right. But I was responsible for every choice I made from that point on, and every action I took.
Yeah.
So if they led me to a place of destruction, I'm the one that did it. It wasn't my mom. It wasn't God. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't any of it. I'm the one who made those choices. So the first thing for people to do is to take responsibility for how you got to where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment you do, the whole world opens up of recognizing that all I have to do to get to where I want to go to transform is to make different decisions, take different actions.
Yeah.
So do starts with taking responsibilities. And I can stop there, or we can go through the rest of the phases, whatever you want to do.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent answer, because if somebody is, whatever their situation is, and they're feeling like they're just not in a good place, I mean, like you said, it goes from ignorance to, you're saying then acceptance? Awareness, excuse me. Ignorance to awareness. And then from that awareness, then you actually take responsibility for where you're at, whether that be good or bad, and then you take action. So if you can go and kind of, like you said, there are phases, and get to that point of taking action, then I mean, that's really about the putting the one foot in front of the other, but doing so in a way that you're like, okay, I am the one that's going to either make this work or not work. I think that was excellent answer. I have not heard it put that way, and so I appreciate it. I thought you might say, well, you got to do this in the morning, or this, or whatever you got to do. But I mean, really, you got to be aware. You got to take that responsibility, and then you got to take the action. That's the bottom line.
Well, and even before you take the action, phase 4 is what I refer to as immersion. It's before you're taking the action. So again, we're talking psychology phase 1, psychology phase 2, psychology phase 3, and psychology in phase 4, even though there is a doing in phase 3. Immersion is that point of, you've heard it enough times being around the environment that we've been around, that there is no such thing as try. Immersion is, are you committed to making this transformation? Because if you're just going to try, don't even waste your time. You have to be ready to fully commit, and then you can't just dabble in it. You've got to immerse yourself in the process. This has got to be where your energy, your focus, all those things are put to. That then moves you to phase 5, where the doing really comes into place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I call interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because the doing is not me trying to figure everything out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
The doing is going, I am going to learn from those who've walked the path before me. I'm going to read books. I'm going to go to seminars. I'm going to, find mentors. I'm going to hire coaches. I'm going to invest in my growth to learn, so I don't have to make all these mistakes that could end up costing me time, money, and possibly ultimately my dream, because I get tired of beating my head against the wall.
Mm.
So the doing really comes down to, when you're moving into that phase, starting to find those people who can intelligently and correctly guide you. Like we were talking about before, if I hire a financial coach whose finances are a mess, they can't teach me correctly what I need to do. So I want to be interdependent, not just with one person, but many people. And in that doing, I'll move to phase 6, which is I take a little bit from Ryan. I take a little bit from Tony. I take a little bit from, John Maxwell, Gary Vaynerchuk, all these different people, and I meld it into my personality. Now it's my identity. It's who I am, because I've learned from others, put it into application, and it's become muscle memory for me because I've worked so much on it. So now I own those skills, that knowledge, that confidence.
Wow, that is awesome. And thank you for expanding on that. That's incredible. And I like that you said, get the try out of there. It's actually one of the chapters in my book. I don't know if you knew that, Willard, but one of the chapters in my book is, I believe the title is take the word try out of your vocabulary.
Awesome.
So a question that I always have for all my guests on here is, if you could go back in time and give just one piece of advice to your teenage self, what would that be?
Piece of advice to my teenage self. Great question. I believe that advice would be, you don't have to do everything on your own. You don't have to prove yourself to everybody. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to accept help.
Yeah, right on. And you do that before all the things that you went through. So, but it's also led to where you're at now. But that's a very good piece of advice. And so, what are you up to? What are you up to these days?
Depends on the time of the day and the day of the week.
Okay.
I've successfully been doing business consulting for about 25 years now. For the past 10 years, I've worked with a team of consultants and advisors where we come in kind of like, a SEAL team type of situation where we've got subject matter experts in finance and in strategy and in marketing and in IT. And we come in as a team to work with companies to help them grow. So a lot of my time is dedicated to that. I am rebranding NAP, the partner who we had the coaching academy with. We parted ways about a year or so ago, amicably. We still do a couple of other side projects together, but we're both going to be continuing to teach NAP, but under different banners. I'm working on a couple of new books, slow progress on those. And I'm working on revitalizing originally it was a desktop program for computers. We were working on this before, when it was still back in the flip phone days. It wasn't the smartphone type of deal.
Right.
And now working on updating that, the idea behind that software product, and turning it more into an app that not only will work for me, but then can be licensed to other coaches, advisors, authors for them to use in building their businesses.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. Sounds like you're staying pretty busy then.
Sometimes, and sometimes totally unplugging because of being so busy.
Right. Yeah, well,
pendulum swings, but yeah, right. I can definitely keep myself busy.
That's great. And so where can people go to find you, or, to reach out to you and contact you? And where can they go to find your book?
So the book is available on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle, you can get it as a paperback, you can get it as an Audible.
Awesome.
Where you can go to find out more about me. You can go to my website, which is willardbarth.com.
Mhm.
WILLARD as in David, B as in boy, ARTH.com. I'm on all social media as Willard Barth. So those are pretty much the places that you can go to learn about those things. And I really do invite you to go check out the TED Talk on TED's site. Just go there and Google my name, or search my name on TED.com, and you'll see the presentation I did about 2 months ago.
That is awesome. Fantastic that you did that. And congratulations. I wasn't aware that you did that. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And where'd you do your TED Talk at?
I actually did that in Butler, New Jersey. So
okay.
although
good.
I've not lived in New Jersey for about 4 years now, the network that I have there, the curator, reached out and asked if I'd be willing to come into town to do the event. And it was kind of like a whole question mark of whether we were going to do it as a virtual or live because of still the pandemic restrictions. And, it was a smaller audience we did it in front of, but did a live event October. I don't know. It was relatively recently.
And what was that experience like?
Different, very different. When I first started speaking, when I was working for Tony, we were taught to be very, very scripted in our presentation. I mean, the words were scripted, our body movements were scripted, where we stood on the stage was scripted, everything was choreographed. And I saw Wayne Dyer speak in New York City a couple of years after I started working for Tony. And he blew me away because he walks in, he goes up on stage, he goes, "So I'm walking over from the hotel, and I know you paid to come and hear me speak about whatever the topic was." He goes, "But as I was getting closer, I just kind of went, I don't want to talk about that. I'm just going to talk." And for 3 hours, he kept that audience mesmerized.
Oh, that guy's awesome.
There were chunks that I'd heard before from different PBS presentations and things, but he was pretty much freestyling on whatever he felt moved to share or wherever the audience took him.
Wow.
And so for 22, 23 years now, I shifted my approach to presenting to just freestyling, knowing what my outline is, knowing what my points are, but just going with, not to sound corny, but as the spirit moves me. My best presentations are when I get off stage and somebody goes, "That was great when you said X, Y, and Z," and I have no idea what they're talking about because I wasn't, I was just presenting.
Wow.
With TED, they want the script. They want to see the script. They want to hear you do a recording of the script. Yep. Then they want you to actually do it live in front of them so they know you're not reading it when you do it. So I had to change back to that whole, every piece of this has to be meticulously scripted. So it was fun, but it was definitely a stretch on my comfort zone.
Wow. Well, congratulations on doing that. That's fantastic. Willard, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And I learned multiple things while you were on here for the last hour with me. And I'm definitely going to check out your book. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I truly, truly appreciate the opportunity.